Welcome back to our channel where we provide updates and undisclosed narratives on the royal family. We provide you with the exciting news Camilla's quiet exit. By King Charles's shocked request sparked a royal crisis. There has been a lot of curiosity in the media and among the public about Buckingham Palace since there were reports of a big fight between King Charles III and Queen Camilla. The palace says the Queen is on medical leave and is resting, which is standard royal protocol. In the weeks that followed, the announcement, several anonymous and unverified accounts from palace insiders told a different story. A huge disagreement over how to handle a major state event that turned into a huge personal and constitutional split, which caused the Queen to suddenly leave public life. The two different stories about what happened and agreed-upon break for health reasons and a palace split have made the House of Windsor and the responsibilities of a modern constitutional monarchy unclear. The new information connected the argument to the preparation and hosting of a state lunch for German President Frank-Walter Steinmeier and his wife. Insiders stated that King Charles's high-profile diplomatic work was meant to improve Britain's ties with one of its most important European allies after Brexit. This kind of event gave a young king a chance to show that he was stable, capable, and had a clear position on the world stage. The feast and celebrations were supposed to show how important the monarchy was for diplomacy and how ceremonial it was. These unproven stories imply that what should have been a well-planned show of unity and statecraft showed long-standing personal problems and competing royal power. The Palace of Buckingham made sure that their remarks were short. The announcement on Queen Camilla's brief absence from public duties only spoke about medical advice and rest. It didn't include anything about fights with other people or royal duties. Royal communications are formal and coded, so the palace normally just releases the bare minimum of information and lets people figure it out for themselves. But the accounts from those who worked there, which were leaked to news outlets and discussed in private briefings, were more detailed and impressive. They spoke about a sequence of events that started with arguments over the Queen's position in the state visit, became worse when Camilla dramatically and symbolically stood up to the Queen, and finished with the King's and Prince of Wales's strong actions. These stories talk about how the Queen quickly gave up authority of the royal household and how she retired from public life, saying it was for health reasons. The biggest problem with the stolen accounts was Steinmeier's visit commitments. It takes months of planning for a state visit, which is a complicated diplomatic event. Buckingham Palace works with the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office and the authorities of the nation that is visiting to plan the ceremony, security, etiquette, and message. Every ceremonial performance, from the mounted guard review at Horse Guards Parade to the toasts at the state banquet, shows respect, recognition of each other, and a certain tone in the relationship between the two countries. During the feast, the king or queen hosts and symbolizes the country. Seating arrangements, toast orders, and speech scripts are carefully worked out to avoid diplomatic blunders and show the appropriate order of precedence among important people. Even little things like decorative objects or the face of a menage may hold a lot of meaning. The people who leaked the information indicated that King Charles had put a lot of effort into the event because he saw it as a defining moment of his reign and a chance to show the world that Britain was confident and open to Europe. In that light, insiders talk of a Windsor planning meeting that set the ultimate obligations for the royal family. Prince William, the Prince of Wales, was said to be in charge of the ceremonial responsibilities and the opening toast, which made him the focus of attention at the event. Princess Anne was said to be in charge of security and working with the government on logistics. She was noted for being very precise in her work. Catherine, the Princess of Wales, who gets good coverage, was said to be in charge of media relations and how visits look. Each task took into account the participants' skills and the purpose of showing a cohesive front. These stories said that Queen Camilla only had little jobs, including decorating the welcome area and setting up the dinner tables. Palace officials say that these tasks are typical hostess responsibilities that may take a lot of time and be very significant. The leak, on the other hand, suggests that Camilla thought the job was too simple, just a cosmetic position. After a long and difficult path to become queen consort, this seeming sidelining is said to be linked to a deep-seated dread of being perceived as a subordinate partner in marriage and institutions, rather than as an equal partner. Insiders say that conference participants could sense a tension underneath the formal formality, a little but obvious shift in the room's mood that hinted at future divisions. The Queen keeps her calm in public, but inside records this as an affront that may harm her place in the monarchy and that occasion. It seems that the mood became worse in the days leading up to the state visit. The most outrageous story that has no proof is that the fight concluded with a fight at Windsor Castle one night. According to unnamed aides, the Queen looked over the final signed program for the dinner. It was intended to have the King's signature on it, and contained the speech's timetable and guests. She saw that her work was not recognized and that her involvement was not mentioned. People who know remarked that not showing up like this may be a sign of being left out in royal etiquette. When the Queen spoke to the King in a private study, there was a fierce argument. These tales tell about an amazing and meaningful act. People say that the Queen threw the signed program into a fire in front of the King. Anonymous witnesses say that there was a shocked silence as the royal crest on the paper darkened and twisted. If what they say is true, burning a state document signed by the King would have been a symbolic rejection of the King's authority and the rules of the institution. People have utilized destroying documents to protest, reject decisions, or show a break in both public and private life. In the highly ritualized British monarchy, this kind of deed would have been explosive both literally and metaphorically, since state documents are tools of continuity and legitimacy, and the sovereign's imprimatur is a strong sign of authority and support. There are leaks that say things are out of order after the fire. The King was very angry and upset since the plans for an important diplomatic event were ruined in a symbolic way, and the behavior made them doubt each other's trust. State visits take a lot of paperwork and close work with both the government and foreign officials to happen again. Even if the backups brought back the real paper, it would be impossible to repair the harm to confidence that was done. People who work at the palace said they were told to conceal secrets, yet stories spread at home, a place that makes people nervous and uneasy. Reports say that the King held private talks in the hours that followed to calm things down without giving away the cause. The next morning, the royal communications team sent out a short message saying that the King would be in charge of getting ready for the state banquet. The proclamation didn't say anything about the Queen. People who worked in the palace thought that her omission from the statement meant that something big was happening behind closed doors. In the days that followed, the hostility between people purportedly became systemic. The initial brawl seems to have turned into a power struggle inside the royal family. Sources who support the idea of a power struggle say that the Queen quickly put in place a series of steps to strengthen her hold over Windsor. Some people have labeled these moves a silent coup, since they were quick and exact, and power was restructured without the customary fanfare or constitutional procedure. These stories said that several longtime household members, people who had worked there for decades and had a lot of institutional memory, were taken out of the castle and let go early on a weekday. The people who were impacted were quietly told and sent away without anybody knowing about it, which was seen as efficient and clinical. By midday, new staff members handpicked and trusted by the Queen had arrived. It is stated that staff members put loyalty to Camilla and privacy first. Replacing veteran assistants with new hires would upset the way things work in a royal household, where institutional memory and informal loyalty are more important than anything else. These stories talk about how a family quickly rose to power when their loyalty to the Queen was more important than their long-standing connections to the King's inner circle. It is said that the restructuring included changes to both the physical and symbolic aspects of the company, as well as changes to the staff. According to leaks, the Queen approved adjustments to the arrangement of portraits, the replacement of carpets and furnishings, and the reorganization of exhibits in private and semi-public places. People who witnessed the alleged rearranging of portraits, putting King Charles in less prominent places, and putting up a new huge coronation image of Queen Camilla in a central hall, thought it was more than just interior design. Portraits and exhibitions show status and legitimacy at palaces and other places of authority. Changes to these arrangements change how the household's visual authority language works. Those who noted these enhancements stressed the Queen's presence and the effort to make the place seem like her tenure. Sources say that a place that had been used as a tribute to Diana, Princess of Wales, who still stirred up strong feelings in the public and split the royal family's allegiance, was especially sensitive. People say that everything relating to Princess Diana was replaced with things pertaining to Camilla. The Queen is claimed to have told a top assistant who was hesitant to make these changes, "The palace can't keep worshipping ghosts." If this is accurate, it shows that she wanted to concentrate on the present leader. These kinds of modifications would mean a lot to personnel, and those who saw them, whether they were motivated by psychological closure, self-assertion, or a deliberate alteration in the palace's public image. Reports in the press said that the king was shocked by how fast and how big the alterations were. He felt bad about his home after finding out that people he knew had been taken away and that even the way his house looked had changed. Palace servants and royal observers said that the household was divided, with one side faithful to the king and his ways, and the other freshly placed devoted to the queen. Some people labeled the incident the silent coup. But it was simply a way for Camilla to run her own kingdom and not be shunned again. Those sources say that the decision made things within the company more tense to a level that couldn't be disguised. People say that King Charles asked his successor for aid as the problem became worse, and put a lot of stress on the king's health and strength. The Prince of Wales's official and legal duty is to get ready for the next king or queen and serve the current one. The accounts indicate that the Prince of Wales was the best person to settle a very personal fight that had major effects on the institution. Sources say that the king summoned his son to explain the problem and beg him to come back to Windsor to calm things down and bring peace back. Sources say that Prince William came to Windsor without a procession to avoid making things worse. The prince immediately saw the new staff furnishings and pictures in the castle, which he thought proved the allegations. He is said to have asked to see Queen Camilla right away. Reports say that the meeting was open and tense in a formal reception room. People who saw Camilla claimed she approached the prince with a calm, even cold manner and asked whether the king was too weak to fight his own battles. This comment showed how personal the disagreement was and how much she hated the king for trying to protect her. These stories say that the prince dealt with the problem without becoming upset. He is said to have put the revised meal plan that the king had turned down on the table. Reports indicated that his goal was apparent. He reportedly informed her, "I'm here to end this," and then said, "The palace is no longer your stage." People who heard him say these things thought he was saying that the institution's stability and status should come first. The prince told the queen that the press had reported on the internal conflict, which was important, since his father's informal protection, which had formerly kept him out of the public eye, could no longer be assumed. The prince said that this meant the queen's position was weak in the eyes of the law, and that the royal family would no longer put up with scandalous conduct. People who were there say that the Prince of Wales stated, "If you want to keep your dignity, disappear before it's taken from you." That was a turning point. It turned a private spat between spouses into a public worry for the crown's image and continuity. Sources say that the heir apparent brought the king and his successor together and made it clear that the monarchy will put stability and public status ahead of internal conflicts. Reports say that King Charles then made the end of the situation official. Reports say that he secretly issued a legal order to suspend Queen Camilla's state rights and duties, which meant she couldn't attend official events. Insiders said that this personal and rapid intervention was necessary to restore order and let the palace control the public narrative. Buckingham Palace claimed that Queen Camilla would be temporarily withdrawing from all public duties because she needed to rest and get well as doctors had advised. This reason for the Queen's sudden absence gave the palace a way to deal with the matter in public that was acceptable from both a social and political point of view. According to leaked testimony, things were different behind that public frame. Medical leave was a nice way to say that someone had to take a break from the situation to calm things down, sources claimed. Several people witnessed a quiet caravan leave Windsor via a side entrance on the day of the formal announcement. Queen Camilla may have left the city and royal life behind. According to several legends, a distant Catholic monastery in the hills of Yorkshire was chosen because it was quiet and peaceful. In these tales, a nun ran a monastery with a simple room that had a single bed, a chair, and a little window that looked out over a garden. The story compares the king's fancy homes to these modest places to stay. According to sources, the supposed relocation of the Queen to such a place was a smart move to ease tensions away from the public eye and media scrutiny, not a legal penalty or shame. By physically separating the principal players, the palace may be able to regain control and bring peace back to the institution. Sources say that the palace's official explanation was used by most major news organizations. Some people commended King Charles for being moderate, while others thought it was a smart way to keep the crown going. The front-page scandal died down as the Queen's name disappeared, and the palace took back control of the public message. But those in power and others who viewed the performance were influenced. The episode revealed how fragile the balance of the modern monarchy is, whether it happened exactly as the leaks say it did, or in a less spectacular way that was made worse by rumors. When there are divides, the institution's reputation might be in jeopardy. The public image of a close-knit family working for the welfare of the country has been carefully managed via ceremony and private restriction. Insiders say that Queen Camilla, a well-known lady who had toiled for years to be next to the king, was removed from the public stage, lived in silence, and lost her dignity. There are a lot of things that may happen because of this. In practice, it shows how hard it is to run a palace. Royal dwellings are challenging because they include personal ties, ceremonial duties, and practical needs. Changes to how jobs are assigned, how people talk to one another, or how personnel are managed might have unforeseen effects. Second, the episode illustrates how important it is to organize the seat's position, the pictures, and order the programs. In an organization that employs symbols to show continuity, respect, and hierarchical order, these nuances are significant because they show and understand authority. Third, look at difficulties with the Constitution and public opinion. Even if the events only happened within the palace, a rift between the king and the queen consort raises questions about personal and official relationships. In constitutional monarchies, private conduct that undermines public trust may lead to significant political consequences, since the monarchy relies on tradition and trust. The Prince of Wales, who is next in line for the throne, pushed for a settlement because the family realizes that the crown's prestige and continuity must be safeguarded. That dynamic makes it clear that the institution needs senior members to protect the monarchy's symbolic capital. The Constitution limits these kinds of acts. The monarch typically has the right to choose who works for them where they live and what they perform as a representative. But tradition, expectation, and public legitimacy put limits on these rights. A big shift in the staff or the public death of one of the king's closest friends might lead to a parliamentary probe, political unrest, and public debate on how the king acts. Even though the British Constitution doesn't include anything about how to run the royal household, people may think that the crown's political atmosphere is unstable because of things like changing clothes and sitting arrangements. Fourth, the program examines how changes in the media impact institutions. In the past, it was simpler to hide palace issues, since there were fewer ways to get the word out, and news cycles were shorter. It's tougher to regulate things, since there are more digital outlets, social media moves so quickly, and audiences are split. Anonymous sources giving different points of view to several publications may make real or fraudulent disclosures worse within hours. The royal family's choice to tell the truth, lie, or stay silent has become harder and harder. a continuous flow of approved information, and a few journalists who are careful no longer govern popular opinion. The audience's reaction is important, too. Symbolic authority institutions require the public's support, but if a lot of people in the community think the crown is engaged in little fights or bad management, support may go down. It is normal for people to feel sorry for those who have been treated unfairly, particularly when health-related reasons are given. People's understanding of the official explanation that the Queen stood down for health reasons depends on how much they believe the palace's statement, how much the media wants to ask further questions, and how people feel about the monarchy's value and role. After stories like this, polls may indicate short-term declines in approval or confidence. But the long-term repercussions rely on management, and if the institution can demonstrate new stability and purpose. The palace had to get everything back to normal while doing as little harm as possible. That included making changes to how things worked, including rethinking staff tasks, making privacy rules stricter, and making it easier to know who was in charge. It also meant changing how people spoke to each other to shift the emphasis from personal conflict to public service. That included keeping public interactions smooth, stressing duty and unity, and putting the absence of a well-known person in words that were easy to understand and empathetic. The palace employs standard medical language to get others to feel sorry for them and provide a reasonable face-saving reason for internal choices, which is what they have done in the past when senior royals suddenly miss work or modify their public obligations. The long-term prospects for both sides are not good. The stories that came out just after the event didn't explain a lot of things, such as what was said in secret conversations, how much the administration changed, and how the Queen got back to her public duties. Buckingham Palace just released a brief statement on the temporary withdrawal and medical advice and did not address any particular charges. This choice fits with the institution's long-standing policy of keeping private matters private, but at a time when the media is more interested and information moves more quickly, it might be both a good and bad thing. The episode has caused Queen Camilla personal and reputational concerns. Her job as Queen Consort is primarily ceremonial, but it provides her moral authority and importance that are important to her public image and the image of the monarchy. The damage may be lessened if the retirement is just temporary and is followed by a well-planned return to public life with clear goals, charitable commitments, and a steady message. If the event causes her to be less able to do her job for a long time, it will impact how the royal family and the public see her legacy. King Charles believes that this event illustrates how hard it is to run a constitutional monarchy. The sovereign's power stems from the law, their own legitimacy, and the fact that the country is still there. If he can't settle differences inside himself, his symbolic coherence might be in danger. According to leaks, he may have assumed custodial responsibility to protect the institution's image by acting quickly. For the Prince of Wales, this experience shows how practical and sometimes delicate the responsibility of heirs apparent is. During turbulent times, heirs use their connections and public stature to mediate internal disputes and facilitate succession planning. Historically, it is rare for the prince to become involved in a fight between the sovereign and the consort. However, in current times, it shows that the public-facing institution occasionally has to make decisions that put group stability ahead of personal loyalties. The experience may lead institutions to think about their staff hiring and the right mix of long-term workers and trusted personal assistants. Many royal families use a combination of senior personnel with decades of expertise and younger professionals who fit the needs of the leaders and the way they communicate. It's hard to find a balance between retaining institutional memory and making sure that people are loyal to the crown and not to any one individual. If the reports are real, the fast staff changes show that things are unstable, which might hurt morale and performance. It also talks about managing visual culture and symbolism. The disputed rearranging of portraits and the alleged removal of items associated with former presidents illustrate how royal material culture conveys authority. Choosing which images to display, which chambers to prioritize for public tours or state ceremonies, and how to tell the tale of the monarchy are not only matters of taste, they also affect how people feel about ancestry continuity and legitimacy. The episode concludes that public depictions of private concerns are not always accurate. Because the palace is cautious, the people involved don't want to speak about their private lives in public, and many of the most absurd charges need independent proof. Parts of the narrative will remain guesswork. A dramatic tale of symbolic disobedience, staff purges, and forced exile may coexist with an official story of leisure and health restoration. Stories affect how people see the institution and its members. We may never know Windsor's secrets. However, the events, whether leaks or rumors, have ignited a strong public discussion about how the monarchy works, the limitations of royal authority and personal strife, and how a centuries-old institution handles crises in a 21st-century media environment. As the monarchy progresses, the royal household will seek to re-establish a safe working environment that enables the king to perform his constitutional obligations and preserves the royal family's dignity and purpose. We'll learn in the coming months whether Queen Camilla will return to public life with her husband or if she'll have fewer official commitments. Staff delicate communication and the balance between private and public may be issues for the palace. It will demonstrate to the public and press how little actions may have a major influence on ceremonial and continuity-based organizations. No matter what happened, the episode showed how personal and institutional disagreements may arise and how difficult it is for the monarchy to maintain its traditions and symbolic value amid fast-paced news cycles and intense scrutiny. The palace's cautious public statement and the Queen's brief absence have created calm. How the royal family and its advisors address unresolved concerns will determine how long this peace lasts. The incident helps us consider the monarchy's social compact beyond individuals. Rituals, authority, and tradition passing provide the crown's subtle power. Thus, its strength rests on its representatives' consistency and predictability. When public conflict threatens predictability, the institution must reassert its service promise and avoid personal vendettas. This involves damage repair and future planning to strengthen the Crown's civic role via charity lobbying and meticulous ceremonial obligations that bind the monarchy to national identity. It also discusses royal family evolution. Charles is a generation-first king. He modified expectations of the royal family, gave greater labor to more royals, and considered its importance. The Prince of Wales will lead the next generation, which must combine tradition with reputational risk in a less respectful media environment. How well the family manages this shift, particularly under hardship, like the individuals in these tales, will affect public opinion of the monarchy. Finally, the case shows how well-known organizations' private ties distinguish symbolic leadership from daily relationships, making them relevant to the public. Because monarchs symbolize continuity, their behavior is watched. What happens next, apologies, clear changes in how the household is run, and the return of functions and rituals that make the public feel safe will determine whether the Windsor incident was a one-time personal crisis, a sign of deeper institutional problems, or a small problem that was quickly fixed. The palace's side story, half official statement, half spectacular leak, shows how difficult contemporary royal administration is. It shows how symbols, logistics, personnel management, and media strategy control British life. The event reminds us that even little things like who sits where, whose picture hangs in the main hall, or how a program is signed, may reveal power, respect, and dignity. The management of these proxies and the institution's reaction to their disintegration will affect people and a monarchy trying to stay relevant and legitimate in a changing world. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe, and share it.